a number of years, so probably got 3 or 4 years now. And it's a great, they've been very supportive. They help me with my slides, and then I do the voiceovers, and then I do the SAP walkthroughs. And I'm currently working on a course for planners, which I'm going to try to do in modules. So instead of a planner needing to take everything, they can just take the module that they want to fill in the gaps, like task lists or strategies or whatever. So this slide just talks about my enthusiasm of teaching SAP or whatever. And I do teaching, coaching, data cleansing, and so on. And currently I'm working at a mine here on Vancouver Island, actually coaching their planners and helping them with data stuff. Like I built an SQL database offline for all the guys that can search parts without SAP for stock or non-stock. This was quite powerful. Anyway, that's a listing of some of my courses I have and the reviews. And so I have 10 courses currently. Oh, what are all those books? Someone's asking a question about the books in my background. No, you can't read the title because it's actually just a sheet you can buy on Amazon. It makes a backdrop. So I have a green screen as well that I can hook up so I can have any background, but that's just I'm just in my home office with this COVID thing. So just a more interesting background than just seeing that green screen.
Leslie said, LOL. It looks very convincing.
Yeah. When I read on the computer. I don't find I read paper books that much anymore. I find computer reading or audiobooks or that kind of thing is much more interesting. So this is just a quick summary of what I've been up to and working at Catalyst, like I mentioned, and the different places I've been. And so my forte, my favorite thing is to do training, delivery, coaching, but also troubleshooting. I love helping people, making them more efficient. So the first thing I like to do at a new company is do an audit of their software, their data, but then also I coach and job shadow the planners and see where they're being inefficient. Like at one site, the planners were taking like 2 hours to take a quote from a PDF and putting it into SAP to order all those parts. And yeah, the quote was like 3 pages long, but when I was done, I showed them how to grab that data, convert it to Excel, and with a template, automatically map everything to SAP parts, and then it put it into the work order. So all the columns on the work order that we needed, we got displayed. So it was a huge investment in saving them time because it, like I say, it takes time to save time. It took a 2-hour process down to about 3 minutes, and the accuracy was huge. So they didn't have to search for part numbers to find if they already had an SAP. It was all automatic. So I have videos of that on my YouTube channel if you're interested. The main focus I do, like I mentioned, is SAP PM, plant maintenance, but I'm an expert in DMS, document management system. And I've worked with project system as well and compatible units for a hydro plant. And what else have I done? Of course, MM to a degree. I don't do warehouse management and public speaking. So any questions about that, feel free. So some people ask me why I focus on SAP PM. Well, my background, like I mentioned, working in genetics was in databases. And when I worked for a number of years at a computer place where I was the retail database guy. So finding the product for a retail store, setting them up with the inventory, retail management software, or the microbiz or whatever fit the needs of that client. So I loved that, researching the best product for the client, and then also learning the software and then teaching the client. So we became resellers for lots of different software with that. And I love helping people. Like I say, what my philosophy of teaching is, one thing is I'll teach you not just how to do something, but I'll teach you why and also what not to do. Sometimes that's the most important thing, is what not to do to avoid problems, to avoid catastrophes with data, especially. If you're worked in SAP, you know that a lot of companies struggle with planners who aren't trained properly, or they run deadline monitoring and they wreak havoc on the company. It ends up costing them, hundreds of thousands of dollars in waste because they didn't train their people. So I like to teach by not just telling them what to do, but also I share these horror stories because people remember that. Many companies struggle, and often people tell me that, why is SAP so unfriendly? And I said, well, sometimes it's how you were taught. Like if you're not taught the easy way, then you think it's difficult. Like one guy in a plane asked me, like, it's like, hey, what did he say? That's like 12 clicks to get a darn PO out of a work order. I said, no, it's one click. And I actually, on the plane, I told him it's that little icon. It looks like 3 pieces of paper. And you can click on that, document flow, shows you all your requisitions, purchase orders, time confirmations. You can drill in. So the data comes to you in SAP if you know how to get it. IHO1, one of my favorite transactions, you can get almost everything from that transaction. IH01, I should say. From the environment menu, you can go and grab all the notifications, work orders against any asset. So it's a very powerful transaction. So there's lots of opportunities for companies to optimize how they use. And the first thing I like to do is make it user-friendly. Make SAP user-friendly, because the PM module is neglected in almost every implementation I've seen. They say, oh, the users will figure that out. Oh, they can learn how to set their own layouts or variants. So, well, why? Why not set them up globally, make them really good? So when you get a new user, often the new users don't get trained after go live. The new user's not set up to fail right from the get-go. So take the time to make SAP more friendly before you push it up to users. So how can learning SAP help me? Well, it was an SAP person at a SAP conference in Florida told me 85% of the world uses SAP. Like almost every government office, military, oil and gas, electric, nuclear power plants. So there's a huge market out there of companies using and struggling with SAP. So the more you can learn about SAP to help those companies, the more contracts, consulting, and anyways, it's a very big market. And you notice that one of the things I mentioned at Catalyst Paper when they were shutting down the site, I had all these technicians taking my planner course. I thought, this is weird, because they were telling me every job ad they saw required SAP. And they were trying to get planner jobs, so they wanted to take my full deal planner course. And a lot of them ended up with really good jobs up in the oil fields in Fort McMurray. And some feedback I got from the owners of the companies up there is that they had some of the best trained people that came from Catalyst Paper. But it's also essential to practice and play with the software. So with micromanagement, not only can you take the courses, but you have access to SAP, so you can go in and practice and play and try different things. And if you're working for a company that has SAP, you should get access to their training client if they don't have one. See if you can get access to their QA, quality assurance client, so that you can go and practice and play. I think every planner should have access to that so that they can try a scenario before they put it into production. And because trying to learn or do things with the fear of wrecking things in production is going to stop people from learning. When you get production, or make sure quality, make sure you change the color to green so you don't mix it up with the production client. I share a few horror stories about that, where people got mixed up and ordered stuff in the training client or quality, and they wonder why 3 weeks later they haven't received anything. Or the opposite, they do something in production where they thought they were in training. So you have to be careful of getting that to users. So the benefits of being an SAP consultant, well, like I say, it's exciting. Everything's changing constantly. Like SAP S/4HANA is coming out with Fiori, so there's lots of learning there. But your skills, if you already know SAP, your skills aren't wasted, because a lot of the screens in SAP haven't changed a lot. So the skills aren't gone, it's just enhanced. Just like how Microsoft Office, when they changed to the ribbons, people who knew Word really well or Excel, they were frustrated at first, but when they got to know it, oh, this isn't so bad. A lot of your skills carry over. You get to travel a lot with consulting, and what I always do is I always bring my GoPro. And so if like the contract in Hawaii, I said, okay, I'll take the contract, but I want to be able to, on every shift out there, it's like a 2-week on site, I wanted to have 4 or 5 days, or in Hawaii I did 10 days. So staying there as a kind of like a built-in vacation. Same thing in Australia. I would have 2 days, or I think it was 3, between my 2 weeks on site in Cobar. But I also asked for 3 days in Sydney. So I paid for my accommodations and that. So I got a little vacation out of it. So I got to know Australia quite well. Great pay. When I was working on the island here, the pay was quite good. But when I started working for Australian company, my pay doubled. So that's kind of how SAP consulting can help. But my old boss told me that when you're consulting, you almost have to have double the pay, because you don't have any pension, you don't have any, you don't have any, the health benefits and all that kind of stuff. So it is a big, you have the extra cost, but it's so wonderful potential, wonderful opportunities there. And I'd like to cover all my expenses. So I worked 4 years in Nevada. I had a 3-day weekend every shift, and they paid all my expenses: hotel, car, food, everything. So I have a 3-day tour of the country. I know more about Nevada than most people living there. And I was traveling all over the different states around Nevada. So if you want to know where some of the best hot springs are, I'm your guy. And I have a personal YouTube channel, where I post a lot of video of me doing these kind of tours. Someone asked if I see the PM module changing a lot with S4. Not a lot. There's some, it depends, like if you're using the web-based version of S4HANA, then it's more like business. If they made it look more and feel like the business warehouse or whatever, where the execute icon is not there anymore. The clock that no one use a lot. I always teach use F8 function key, because it's way easier when you're searching. Just hit a key, F8. But that button's gone. It's now a button on the bottom right-hand corner, completely opposite that says the word execute. So that was initially frustrating for me, but I use F8 key. So when I searched, it didn't slow me down. But a lot of things are enhanced. A lot of things are better in S4HANA. Like a lot of things are a little easier. So I have a course on micromanagement about some of the changes, and I show both what it looks like in the web version on the cloud kind of thing, and what it looks like in SAP. And of course, within SAP, you can change your GUI view so you go back to more like what you're used to. But you might have to get used to some of the new icons and stuff. If all the training manuals are going to be with the new icons, that's what you should set your GUI to look like. So your journey on SAP: learn, apply, and grow. And if you're working for a company and they're paying for you to learn, what a great opportunity. Micromanagement has a letter you can send your boss to get approval for spending money. And so take advantage as much as you can to learn while you're employed, because you're building up your resume, you're building up your skills, a great place to practice. If you're currently not working, then micromanagement has the gives you the opportunity to have an SAP client to play in. And so that's what this slide talks a bit about. We had something go out recently about how one of our best students has taken something like 6,000 courses or something. I forget what 6,000 hours or 6,000 points. Anyway, he's taken almost every course on the portal, and he paid for an annual membership, of course. And so that now he probably knows more about SAP than a lot of people. Like I like to specialize, so I'm an expert in certain modules, and I know a few consultants who are generalists. They know a little but a lot of modules. So it's really depends on what you find like is your passion. Is your passion materials? Then of course the material management module. But you should also learn PM so you know how they're integrated. And one thing I should mention that a lot of times when I'm teaching at a company, their planners need help with Excel because a lot of people export data from SAP and play with it in Excel. And I say play because really they should figure out how to do stuff in SAP, but sometimes what they want to do, SAP can't do. And they're not given the tools like the SQVI, which is to write queries in SAP. It can be dangerous, so they limit who's allowed to use that. So what we do, we export all the columns of data from SAP into Excel, and we consider that our raw data file. And then in another Excel file, I link to that. So not only makes it super fast, the filters are super fast, but you can't wreck the data. And to update, it's easy. So all your pivot tables on your charts and all that stuff in your Excel is easily updated. Say once a week, you do another data dump. If your main file is linked to that raw file. And I have a video on how to do that if you're not familiar with that in Excel. Of course, I also use Access. And Access, because a lot of companies have it, and it's way more powerful, way more friendly, I think, once you know it. And also, it is way safer for data. And of course, SQL, online SQL is a really good thing to learn. And there's a site online called Caspio. They're out of actually Ukraine. They give you free access to for 14 days completely for programming. So if you want to learn SQL, that's a good place to start. Of course, micromanagement. I don't know if they have a course on SQL. If they don't, maybe that's I can put one up there. Questions people have asked in the past. So while I'm going through these, if you're thinking of any questions that you have, feel free to type them in the question box. Why is SAP so difficult? There's that story I told you about the guy in the airplane. 12 clicks to get a PO. That's ridiculous. Of course, if you really know SAP, you know that sometimes you need that. If you have a work order that has like 50 components on it and you want to see just the PO of one row, so you need to know how to drill into that one row. Like I teach drilling in by double click on the row number. So most people think you have to use the buttons, and yeah, there's lots of easy ways to do things. So what does SAP stand for? Like if you want to type in the question, if you know the answer to that, but one of my conferences I was speaking at, I asked the audience, they were all SAP trainers. So I was training trainers about how I train or teach SAP. And first question I asked the audience, what does SAP stand for? And everyone was saying negative stuff. They were saying, and I expected that. They were saying stupid ass program, send another planner, system ain't paying, all sorts of negative stuff. Some companies even make mugs with all the negative stuff on it. So my first slide comes up, it's Superman with the SAP logo, and I say, it's super amazing program. I say, if you don't have a positive attitude, you can't teach SAP and you can't learn SAP as a student. You have to have a positive attitude. And the more you learn about SAP, the more positive attitude you'll probably have about it. So I also tell people now that SAP stands for super amazing pizza. I say, why pizza? Makes me hungry. It's because you can have it with a lot of anchovies. Like you can have it any way you want. Like a lot of companies, when they buy SAP, the managers think, oh, I love anchovies. I'm going to put a lot of anchovies. And everyone hates that, right? The planners, the technicians, they can't use it. It fails. The implementation fails. No user adoption. It's a disaster. So they end up taking off those anchovies, which costs a lot of money to put them on. It takes them. And basically, the customization of SAP is very powerful, but you want to make sure that it's not too many anchovies. So that's an analogy I give to explain how it's very customizable. Now, of course, you know what it stands for, right? Systems, applications, and products and data processing. kind of like a meaningless acronym. Like many acronyms, when you teach SAP, if you're a teacher, make sure you explain the acronym so you don't lose people by saying, oh, just go and hire a VA. What's a VA? Veterans Affairs? You know, you need to explain what that means. You know, it's a virtual assistant, and explain what it is. One of the things, even I've been teaching computers since I was young, I try to always explain the acronyms. The slides should explain them as well. Like PO, purchase order. Because sometimes I ask my students to catch me if I don't explain an acronym. So they're my best police. How do companies manage obsolete parts? Poorly. Almost every company, they don't manage it very well. Supply chain and maintenance don't talk to each other very well, typically. So supply chain will obsolete parts without communication with maintenance. So now all their BOMs have obsolete parts, and they go to order stuff, to buy stuff. It says parts obsolete, blah, blah, blah. So the supply chain and maintenance need to be best friends. So maintenance is the customer of supply chain. So they should want to make maintenance happy. So there are some transactions in SAP that do mass change. If your BOMs are set up properly in testless, then CS20 allows the mass change to flow all the way through. So when you change a material for a good reason, and if you change it because you got a better price, make sure you talk to your planners that it'll still perform the job. Of course, you do mass change with LSMW or other tools like in S4HANA. What are the skills that are helpful along with SAP? Like I mentioned, Excel, Access, SQL, what else? Outlook. If you know how to use Outlook calendars, or Google calendars, you can actually integrate data with Google calendars from SAP. So I built something for automation, the shift calendars in Excel to automate it till the year 9999, and that was helping them. And then I found out I found a template. It's awesome that has all the shifts available in SAP integrated in this Excel tool. And the other skills I can think of, that's the main ones. If you can think of anything that you find useful with SAP, you can type in the question there as well and share with the group. So I don't know if I went too fast through that presentation, but I know your time is valuable, and it's now 10:25, so that was about a half an hour. So we can have some time for questions, and I can share my SAP screen if you have a question while I'm in SAP. Learning ABAP is good. Yeah. You know what I heard? Someone mentioned that comment, ABAP, very true. One thing I heard, I don't know if it's true, is that the highest paid programmers on the planet are ABAPers, people who know how to program code in SAP. And the code used to be, when I first started SAP back in the late 90s or early 2000s, programmers told me that it was all in German. A lot of the code was in German because the software originated in California through IBM, but the programmers were mostly, they relocated to Germany. And anyway, so there was a lot of German words in there in code. But now I think it's a lot more friendly. Yeah, learning programming is great. LSMW, SQBI, if you get into those, you kind of get a taste of that with the BAPIs. So that gives you an introduction to that. The one thing that was cool at Catalyst Papers, we had our own ABAPer in Vancouver. So anything we wanted, he built. And it was amazing. Like, we needed a better search tool. So he built us a Google search tool that was embedded in SAP for fuzzy search and search all the fields. It was amazing. Now that's available to other third-party software programs, but we had that way, way early. We had electronic shopping carts for parts, that we had for staging and so on. Whatever we needed, pretty much he would build for us. Yeah, so having good ABAP is good. Excellent.
Greg, what drew you to PM over other modules?
Because my background was in databases, and also I worked in companies that as helping people with parts and stuff like that, and the maintenance side of thing always interests me, like doing my own oil change, my own brake jobs. So the maintenance side of things really interests me. And Catalyst Paper, that's where they had a huge need to teach all the technicians. So that's where I gravitated to helping all the technicians learn SAP, which they were teaching me as I was teaching them. I was learning about the difference between ball bearings and roller bearings and different purposes, and pumps for pumping water, pumping acid, how they're different packing, all that kind of stuff. So maintenance has always been very interesting to me. So because of the need and because of the interest.
Nice, very cool. And looks like we have another question coming in from Leslie. What kind of companies use the PM module? Oil and gas doesn't sound like manufacturing.
Yeah, right. PM is actually plant maintenance. So it's any company that maintains their own assets. Like mining is huge with SAP all over the world, and they maintain their haul trucks, their all their pumps for the process plant, fixed plant. That they maintain all their equipment. So if you're talking about production, like manufacturing, that would be more the PP module, production planning. And I've never gotten into that. Catalyst Paper, they didn't use SAP for their production planning. They had their own software that independent of SAP that integrated. So they never went down the PP module. So many companies use it, like train companies. They maintain their trains and so on. Utilities, yeah, definitely utilities. And utilities use what's called linear assets. It's a module or a functionality in SAP for linear things like train tracks, hydro lines, anything that you can have a problem within the line would be a linear asset. You can make a notification at the 3-mile mark or 3.5-mile mark, and it's easy to find where the problem was. So yeah, utilities, nuclear power plants, like I mentioned, government, the shipping companies. Now, some companies will use SAP for their HR and accounting because it's enterprise, right? It does everything. It has modules for almost everything except it doesn't do AutoCAD, but it integrates. I was at a utility company with compatible units. They integrate with the CAD drawings for doing the drawings. The quotes are all integrated with SAP. Pretty amazing. We just drop objects onto the CAD to design the new power plant, and everything is automatically integrated for the price and how much labor for quoting and then for actually building for all the work orders.
That's very impressive. And actually, on the same theme of integration, we have someone asking about DMS and how DMS is integrated with SAP.
Well, DMS, and they also have a tool called Easy DMS, which is being phased out. HANA won't support it. But DMS, Document Management System, it allows you to control your documents within SAP. Like some companies use SharePoint, and you can integrate that as well to manage versioning and all your documents, whether it's manuals, job procedures, whatever, a warranty, all the documents like vendor invoices, vendor quotes can all be managed within DMS. And it integrates with all modules. So in PM, where we use DMS, like we do use services for objects on a notification to attach pictures. You know, they say pictures worth 1,000 words, right? So you can attach a picture, but you should have a document server where those pictures are actually saved, so you don't interrupt your SAP server. That's a technical thing. But DMS we use for maintenance manuals that we can actually put into the structure in IHO1. We can actually put it into the equipment BOM. So you'd see the parts for that truck and the maintenance manual, operating manual, all that. So those manuals are actually stored and controlled in SAP DMS. And of course, the job procedures, like check sheets, all that kind of stuff. Permits, like that can all be in SAP DMS, and then you link it to the taskless operation. So what is a job? Would have the job procedure attached to it. So when you print out the work order, it prints out the documents. So all your document control can be automated and managed in DMS.
Okay, good to know. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No worries, that's it. I think that covers DMS to a degree. it's a powerful module to learn, but it's also it's underutilized, and people don't know about templates. They don't use templates. You should build and use templates. I push templates for everything. You're building a new equipment, build it from a template, copy a template. You're building a new, so everything in SAP, why reinvent the wheel? Almost always you should build by template, copy, reference objects, you know, the idea of having less work to do. That's what task lists are all about. People think task lists are just for maintenance plans, for preventive maintenance. They're not. They're for corrective maintenance as well. If you have a breakdown on a motor, why should you have to type anything repetitive? Everything could be stored in a task list that automatically comes into your work order.
Yeah,
so
very smart.
Any other questions?
Yes, we have a question coming in from YouTube. So we are live streaming this. So one of our viewers is asking, how can a beginner start their journey in SAP, and without having a technical background, is it possible to learn SAP?
Without a technical background, yes, you could learn SAP as a user, right? And if you have no technical background, but you have technical aspirations, then anyone can learn anything, right? You could be like 60 years old and learn how to play a piano. I think the best way to learn is, if you say like you said, don't have the technical background, and if you don't have access, is you try to get a job that is using SAP, an entry-level job. If that's all you can get in, get your foot in the door, and then and they will have documentation probably online. They should, on their network, that you can read through. And if you can get access to even just their training client, and say, well, yeah, you want to be able to get a promotion to the next level, and maybe they'll give you access to their training client so you can work after hours on their SAP. Well, good luck to you. Package sequence means how hierarchy columns on package screen interact with the sequence package. Well, that's a pretty technical question. Oh, I didn't read the top part. I'm having trouble with using IP11. Okay, IP11. Now, some people say, well, what is that? Well, it's a transaction code. And change maintenance strategy, specifically the maintenance package. And maintenance strategies should be really controlled. You shouldn't allow your planners to edit them or create them. It should be controlled centrally by one person, because they are very complicated. And this is a question beyond the scope I can answer in here, but just to say, I feel for you, because strategies, I usually build them in Excel. And so you can have the whole strategy built, and then you copy and paste that into the grid within the strategy that you're trying to create. The maintenance package and package sequence screens, how does the hierarchy columns on the package screen interact with the sequence page? So in SAP with the strategies, hierarchy is the concept where if you have, say, a run hour strategy, so you have like 500 run hours, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000. So you have those different cycles of maintenance. When it's set hierarchical, then when you're going to actually build a maintenance plan for that, you can have it either way with check boxes or through the menu. You can have it so that 1,000 run hour maintenance doesn't need, it would suppress the 500. So that gives you that ability with hierarchical assignment. So that is something that is better explained graphically, like with often I actually explain it using something like PowerPoint or Excel. So that's beyond the scope, but that would be one of my modules in my planner course, is the idea of how to create strategies. And a lot of times companies don't have good strategies. They like a monthly strategy, you should have like where you can actually have a factory calendar assigned. You can have it like 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and have hierarchy, so they could exclude the previous if you want to or not want to. But then you can also set a key date so that a true monthly can happen. We can have something on the true first of every month, rather than SAP's assumption of 28 days. So that question is a good question, but beyond, I think, have I answered it? What, Jessica, package and package sequence, how did hierarchical columns? Yeah, so what I would recommend to understand it is you build one with hierarchy and build another without. And then when you go to create the plan, and set the operations to the different cycles, see what your options are. You'll see whether you can select hierarchical or not. And when you run the plan, does it kick out both the 500 and the 1000 operation on that work order, or did it properly exclude it? Now, if you're doing that exclusion, then on the 1000, if you're going to do the 500, then you need to have your job procedure have both of those within it. Or both, what I'd say is have both documents. So you only have one document to maintain. Any other questions?
All right, I do have another one coming in, Greg, asking to talk about the cost center fiscal year.
Okay, so this is a problem a lot of companies have, where the accounting department is supposed to maintain the cost center to the activity types within that are within the PM module, that the activity type on the operation within the work order, right? Say what kind of activity it is. Well, depending on the activity for that the cost center, it would the rate, the charge out rate, the cost of the work order would be different. So if it's you want to have a work center that is set to 0 for planning and scheduling operations work, because there's 0 costs, you don't want to capture the cost there, then that needs to be set up. And every fiscal year they have to set that up. And luckily in S/4HANA, there's the functionality is going to be a lot easier. So currently you have to go into a transaction and then you have to set up in the grid, and that's on the AR account side. So I have a job procedure I posted on LinkedIn recently about that. So I don't know if I have it available here, but anyway, that's something that should be maintained by AR. And the T code, I think it's MP26. I don't recall. One of the tricks I use when I can't recall a T code is I type in MP00 in the T code box. I call it the 00 trick, and then it will list all the T codes that are related to that transaction. So I'll just give you a quick demo of that. Go MP00 and see if oh, that one doesn't work. So if I go IP00, you see it lists all, not in the SAP menu, everything to do with maintenance plans.
That's a very handy trick.
Yeah. So that question, I'll get back to you on that with the post. Well, maybe I'll post that on micromanagement and as a blog.
Yeah, that'd be a great blog.
What changes were there in SAP PM with S4? What changes were? Okay, so there's a course you can take. I'm giving you at the end a coupon. You can take the course for, I think it's 10 or 20% off. I forget what I put, but I think it was on the previous slide. No.
Oh yeah, I did see your code on the previous slide. Maybe one or two back. It had your.
So that some of the changes, like I mentioned, that the execute button's gone. It's available now, but it's the idea you can count that it gives you a count of how many rows you have in every ALV layout. When you do every search, you get a list of things. It'll show you the count of how many rows you have found. So that's great. There's quite a few other little things, but a lot hasn't changed with what the user sees. Of course, the big changes are underneath the hood. Like the database is completely different. So it's supposed to be way, way faster, way more enhanced. So the technical changes are drastic, are huge improvements. But from the perspective of PM as a user, there's not going to be a huge change if you're using a standard log and GUI. What kind of companies use the PM module? I think we answered that one. So any other questions?
And we'll give people just maybe another minute or so. If you have any looming questions for Greg, please type them in. And in that time, Greg, if you want to tell us about any courses you might have coming up, not to put you on the spot. I know there's been a lot going on in the world, but we love your courses. They're great. So we always welcome new great courses.
Well, the main one I'm working on is I have an outline done for. It's a planner course to publish on MCC. And the planner course, I'm going to build it with as separate courses that the person can take the courses individually or take them as a package if they're really like a new planner. But if you're a planner who's been using SAP for like 5 years and you just want to understand strategies, then there'll be a module just about strategies. Another module just on task lists for corrective and for preventative, but everything about task lists, basically making a work order template. Now, I have a list I'm working on, all the courses I feel I need to do, and that I could post that as a blog to get feedback. I have a form on Google when I ask companies, well, what courses do you want? What courses do you need? Maybe that's something also I could talk to somebody at MCC and say, well, what they recommend I build next.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. And this inspired some new questions. Do you see those ones popping up, Greg?
Yeah, there's courses that get certified in PM. So a lot of the courses in MCC they take will help you pass the tests in certification for PM. So they're the more you search online for certification guidance, you'll find a lot of information on. So I'll just use Google to find out. Like you might even be able to find some example questions to get certified in PM. Don't you think that Learn SAP Activate could help, even if they will be SAP key users or SAP consultant? Do you think that Learn SAP Activate could help? What I'm not sure what you mean by Learn SAP Activate. So I'll write that down. I'll have to Google what you mean by SAP Activate. One of the things that that SAP has to offer is it used to be called UPerform, where it's basically you can record a transaction and then it makes a video to help teach people. It makes an interactive video to test people, and it makes all the training materials. And they have a new name for it now, and I think their agreement with that company is fading, so SAP has their own solution. And I've been investigating other companies, so their solution for making training support within the help system of SAP. Like there's WhatFix and on-screen and so on. So I'll have to research that SAP Activate. Are you going to create, do you, it scrolls automatically, I have to fast to read it. Are you going to create, do you have a course on PM config? Yes, I have a course on PM config, and that one is a fairly long course, and there's a lot to it. And there is some integration points between PM and of course MM and FICO. So learning those configurations as well would be useful. Tools. Methodology and best SAP HANA, including is new SAP framework for SAP HANA, including methodology and best practices. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's if you go on SAP's site, you can actually get a lot of the technical documents on best practices with HANA, implementing HANA. That's beyond the scope of what I do. I'm not an implementer. Usually I come in after as they actually have implemented, converted, I help out with data cleansing and I help out with the training part of it. And I'm not an implementer. What eligibility criteria for SAP PM? Yeah, the SAP, what is your eligibility criteria? I think it's just if you pay them the money, you can take the test to get certified. So I personally think it's a bit of a cash grab. Like I know people who've taken it, and it's not just requiring you to know SAP PM or like say PM certification, to not just to know as a user, but you have to also know the detailed configuration and also the configuration points between PM and FICO and MM and so on. So it's basically, to get certified, it's to become, if you're interested in being a PM consultant. And I've been working with SAP for, like I said, over 15 years. So that is sometimes experience and knowledge is more valuable in a lot of ways than certification. Especially now, I've been seeing a lot of people flooding the internet with all the cheats for certification and all that. So basically, without any knowledge, you can just study and pass an exam for get certification. So some people are worried that the value of SAP PM certification is going to start declining. So if you are hiring someone and they're PM certified, make sure you really know their skill set. Like one interview question I had once was something silly, like they always do. They want to see how well you memorize T code. So they asked, "What is the T code to schedule a maintenance plan?" And I said, "Well, that's against my philosophy to memorize everything." So I said, "Well, I teach IP00, so the user doesn't need to memorize and know it's IP10 to schedule a plan. They just go IP00 and it lists all the T codes that are related to planning and scheduling." So the guy who was interviewing me didn't even know that trick, the 00 trick. So I got the contract. But they should not just ask those kind of questions. Yeah, knowledge is better, way more important than certification. Yeah,
and it should be, I think it's important for us to say as well that MMC courses are not intended for you to pass SAP's certification. We have a separate certification program, two completely separate different programs. So just, I know sometimes that word gets thrown around, so just as a sidebar.
Yes, knowledge is better. Someone agreed, Maria. Knowledge is better than certifications, right? And a lot of times what I do as a consultant is data cleansing. And data cleansing, it's like you don't learn that with SAP, right? You learn that by knowing data, like knowing how to write code and write macros and VBA and how to use different tools to do data cleansing. Like NRX is a tool that I was educated by their lead programmer about how to use NRX Asset Hub. Basically, it's companies like Shell Canada, Shell Global. They bought that tool to cleanse their data, but the tool is very difficult to learn unless you have a background in programming database. It's like SQL kind of coding. Like ABAPers would just eat it up. But so when I was teaching, we're cleansing data in Canada. I said, well, you guys have this NRX tool. Why isn't anybody using it? Because no one knew how to use it. So that's what motivated me to learn how to use it. And there's other tools as well. Utopia has tools, all sorts of tools for data cleansing. Yeah, 00 trick will work with most transactions. Like I'll just give you an idea. Someone asked about, will it work with MM? Yeah, MM works. So if you're going to use it, what I'd recommend is go to extra settings and make your favorites on the bottom. Right, so you make your favorites on the bottom. So when you use this trick, you don't have to hide your favorites. So that's MM00 would bring up everything to deal with materials. MB00 is material transactions. So I like this skill because sometimes I'm helping a user who doesn't have any very good favorites. So if I don't memorize all the T codes, I can help them and then they can navigate the menus better. So if you find it doesn't work with one, like IE00, that's everything about equipment. But if it doesn't work, it'll just tell you it won't load anything. If you ever do this to a user, to help yourself help them, make sure you put it back to the SAP menu after with the little blue button. So not just show them how to use something, but show them how to get back to where they were. So when you leave, they're not mad at you. Yes, someone asked if you open with 00, does it open all the associated transactions? And yes, it does. So when I do IP00, you see it's or work, work, right? Work is IW. So IW00, that's notifications, work orders. So it's everything about work management, workflow. So notifications, work orders, time confirmations, So it's a very, very useful skill. So if that's one takeaway you got for today, great, share it. It's called the 0-0 trick. That's what I call it anyway.
It's a very cool trick.
Another skill that a lot of people don't know, it's so basic, is Control Z or Control Z if you're in the USA. You know, when you mess up something like on a work order, a common problem, people mess up a description. You know that if you accidentally type on top of the description, oh darn, Control Z, right? You can go back through time. They don't have an undo button, but Control Z works in text situations within SAP. So just another keyboard shortcut trick. Any other questions? Maybe I can just take a quick peek at IP11 and see. Yeah, I'll go down a rat's hole for that with that one. But
I love
IP,
it.
that was the question. IP11 was about managing strategies.
Yeah.
This whole thing.
It's so nice to have you working in the system and showing everyone. And I will note everyone that after we get done today, this is actually being live streamed on our YouTube channel. So you can go back, rewatch. If you want to see any of Greg's handy dandy tricks that he's been pulling out of his SAP hat, it will all be on there for you to watch.
So to really see the hierarchy in effect, you'd have to go into a maintenance plan for and see it when you're setting the packages on the task list operation. Then you'd see the effect of that. Where will be? I didn't understand the question, Maria. Sorry, I don't hear.
Oh, I think maybe she's asking about where the recording will be. If you go onto YouTube, Micromanagement we have our own YouTube channel.
Okay.
So it's being live streamed now, so it will stay there. So you can go on. We actually do Q&As every month. So we always have emails being sent out about that. There's a banner on the website that shows you how to sign up. So for the future, if anyone wants to join, but if you want to watch our last 3 months, so we did print maintenance, of course, last month was MM and SD, and then our first month was OPOP. So you can go back and watch all of those and also watch today.
So someone asked about what is the future of training in SAP? Right? When I'm training SAP, it's slides. People like slides sometimes they don't. When I train in SAP, I usually train in the client so that they're seeing, and if I'm going to click on something, I will hover. I won't go past this until all the students have seen, okay, that's where we're going. Go in extra settings. And then say, okay, everyone with me? Okay, great, let's go to extra settings. And so you need to explain why you're going there to make changes, but also wait for the students to stay with you if you're doing a live session. And one of the things that I built recently is an interactive video where the student can decide what they want to learn. So it starts off with just a standard SAP screen like you see here. And I make everything in red little boxes of what you can click on. So what you click on, it'll take you into a video talking about that concept. Like say, what's this button do? So you click on the button and it takes you into talking about, well, there's the menu and there's options, and just avoid hard copy. Avoid, quick cut and paste. Hard copy is great for doing a screen dump. Quick cut and paste, I teach them, avoid that, because if you activate that feature, it's so annoying. It trips up so many users. So if anybody goes and to try to select text anywhere, they think that their SAP is broken. And it's a common problem in the help desk. You know what they do? They reinstall SAP. And the user loses all their history. They lose all their favorites. So if you have that feature activated, watch when I try to highlight text. It seems like I can't select text anymore. That's the symptom of this problem. Right? So that's what causes it. Now, what is it done when I highlight? It's actually done a Control-C automatically. I can just go Control-V. So it's called quick copy. It's a feature. I don't know who invented it way back, but it's been a burden for us. I've always asked SAP to get rid of it or turn it off and give us the ability of getting it off the menu, because it messes up a lot of users. So now I can select normally. Yay. Now, of course, you can hold your mouse down, you can select. I know one planner who loves it. Like, I always warn people against it, but he said, I really like it now, because he just holds it when he wants to delete something. He holds his mouse and then hits delete. So yeah, you can still highlight to delete. But he says it takes away his need to go Control-C. Well, whatever. He likes it, that's great. But I often teach to avoid it. And if you do activate it, make sure you turn it off after. So there's a bunch of things like that.
That's great.
Any other questions?
There's Maria wrote, that's great, which I agree with. I think you've given us a plethora of wonderful tricks today.
So remember, don't just teach what to do, what not to do also.
Yeah. Oh, I love that in the beginning too, you said you taught the horror stories because it sticks with people.
Well, I have a document. It's listing all the horror stories as short paragraphs, and there's about 4 pages long. You know what one person did recently? They were buying roller bearings for a conveyor, and they held down the 0 key, and they didn't realize it, so they hit save. Instead of ordering 10 roller bearing assemblies for the rolls for a conveyor, they ordered 10,000. Oh, and the manager approved it, didn't realize, and went all the way up to the CEO, and they ended up having a couple of weeks later all these semis coming in with roller bearings. They spent I think it was about $1 or $2 million worth of stuff. So be careful. That was a domino effect of bad practices, right? They weren't having good cost control on approvals.
You're getting a lot of love in the question panel. People saying stories are great. It's great learning from you. Wanting to know more tricks in our last few minutes, but we should wrap up so we can let you get on with your day. But it looks like Anita has one last question.
Oh, I love that question. It's like, is there a way to tie a measurement point to an order? So measurement points are attached to assets, to equipment, or functional locations. And anything subordinate can actually inherit the readings from that measurement point. So like your odometer on a truck, all the things subordinate can inherit, like the engine, the tires, and so on. So basically, the work order could be automated that it gets created after so many run hours. So like the life cycle of, say, something you need to change out after, say, 5,000 run hours, then that thing would inherit from the odometer readings. And when it hits that, your PM is what connects it all. So does that answer your question, Anita? It's automate the preventative maintenance.
She said, yes, thank you.
Okay, so now it's not just for run hours, of course, it's also can be for condition-based maintenance, where you can have a measurement point take readings like, say, putting in oil samples, right? And you automate your oil sample data to go into your SAP. And when an oil sample gets to a certain bad, like fails quality, then automatically SAP will create a notification to let you know that there's something wrong with that motor. So it's automating that kind of stuff is wonderful. I mean, it takes away a lot of the manual effort. Okay, so I guess we're wrapped up. I could go on all day. But...
You've been wonderful, Greg. We're so lucky to have you as an instructor and teacher.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Keep in touch.
Thank you, Greg. We appreciate it.
Okay, bye.